Welcome to Womenetics Digital Library, today's imperative for business success.
Ladies and gentlemen, Janet Kraus. I understand that the audience today is women who run their own businesses, women who are thinking about starting their businesses, and women who support entrepreneurship in general. My goal today is to share with you my entrepreneurial journey, the story of Circles, which I like to describe as a 10-year overnight success, and the learnings that I think will be valuable to you as you go back into your businesses or as you think about starting your businesses. I want to provide high-level insights, strategies, and maybe even some tactics, and definitely, if I can, inspiration for those moments when it's hard. And I also hope you'll see a theme here, a thread, throughout the story that I'm going to share about the power of intentionality, which is about being incredibly clear about what you want to do, articulating it, writing it down, sharing it with others. This is what helps you to manifest what you really want. So the story of Circles began not with a business idea. It began with two people. Kathy Sherbrooke and I met on the very first day of business school at Stanford Business School, surprising that Harvard has taken me in kayaks, because that's what you do at Stanford, and we talked about entrepreneurship in that very first moment. And we talked about Anita Roddick, if any of you know her. She founded the Body Shop Skin and Hair Care Company. Kathy had written about Anita Roddick in her essay, and I had come to business school with the express intention of working for Anita after business school. So we talked about entrepreneurship, we definitely clicked, and then we began to do things together at business school, including co-directing the first-year show and developing the class gift for our class. We talked about starting a company, but we knew that we weren't going to be able to do that straight out of business school. So instead, what we did is took a 5-day car trip across the country back to the East Coast where we were from. And what did we talk about in that car trip? Well, again, we didn't talk about the business idea. We talked about each other. We talked about our values, we talked about our strengths, our weaknesses, our preferences, the things that we wouldn't tolerate, the things that we knew that in a year we would both hate about each other but accept. We talked about what type of people we wanted to hire, what kind of culture we wanted to build, what size company we wanted to build, how far we wanted to stretch ourselves, whether or not we wanted to build something where we could own 100%, or whether we wanted to build something and take outside financing and make it really big. We also talked a lot about our personal goals in life and how could we build a company that would allow women who are 28 or women of any age or men of any age to be able to both have a job that they loved and have a personal life that they could support. I tell you all of this because people find it unusual that we spent 2 years and 5 days talking about us as people and never having a business idea. But Kathy and I believe that our investment in the partnership, which ultimately is like a marriage, you frankly spend more time with people that you work with than your husband or wife in the end of the day. It was the key, the strength and the endurance that allowed us to go on to build this company. So as I said, we did not start straight out of business school. Kathy went back to California and worked for a software company. I went to work for Anita Roddick. I said I was going to do it, and I did it. Kathy called me about 1.5 years later, and she told me that she was getting married. And I knew right then and there this was the time for us to start our business. She was moving back to the East Coast. And part of what we talked about when we were discussing who we were was our risk profile. And at that time in life, we had approximately the same risk profile. Relatively unencumbered, some business school debt, no children, no house. For me, her getting married was the turning point for when our risk profiles were changed. And it's not that you can't have different risk profiles, it's just understanding where you are so that as you go into this, you can accommodate each other. And I felt like for us, starting at the same moment in time was important. So we quit our jobs, we moved to Boston. I got a 2-bedroom apartment in the South End, which if anybody knows Boston, it's no longer affordable, but it was at the time. We set up shop in the 2nd bedroom of my apartment. We had 2 rules, because of course, we don't have a business idea. So our rules are that we're going to start at 8:30 and end at 6, and that I'm going to wear my shoes to work. This was the work-life balance, the work-life division for me. I'd put my shoes on in my room, and I'd walk to work. So the very first thing we did before we even started talking about the business was to write down all of that great stuff that we'd written in the car together. We wrote our value statement for our company. What was the culture going to be like? We wrote a vision of success for ourselves, and we drafted a partnership agreement, part of which was a legal document, part of which was just the way that we intended to work with one another. Only then did we start to talk about the business idea. So to Elizabeth's point, Risk. Yeah, we took a lot of risk. We don't even know what we're doing. So we talked first about what kinds of companies we were not going to start. Really helpful. Puts a whole bunch of stuff off the table. Then we started talking directionally. Do we want to start a retail company, a product company, a services company? And there was this little thing called the web that was coming around, and we said, do we want to start a web company? We talked again about the size of the business, which meant the size of the opportunity, the scalability, and whether we would need to fund it. And then, only then did we decide, okay, we got to get clearer here. We picked a customer who we wanted to focus on. And we decided to focus on the time-starved professional woman. We held focus groups, we interviewed her, we did surveys, we did secondary research. It took us a while to get our idea in focus, quite frankly. We wrote 8 business plans on different ideas for the time-starved professional woman. It took us a year to get the idea clear, the opportunity size, the business plan complete. The initial idea was a consumer-based internet company focused on aggregating service providers on the web. So if any of you are familiar with ServiceMagic or Angie's List, that was our idea. That's what we went out to start. They started 5 years later. We knew that we were going to have to raise money to do this because, can you believe it, in those days, building a website like that cost $250,000, right? I mean, it's only about 12 years ago or 13 years ago, but nobody had any idea what these things were about. Today you could do that same website for $30,000, but that's what it cost. So we needed to go out and raise money, but we had no track record. And this was actually before the dot-com frenzy. So we went to friends and family. Not everybody has the ability to do that, but we did. We went to friends and family, and we raised about $400,000, which is a lot. But we treated people like a very formal round A seed investment, with ROIs on what the return would be if the business was successful, making formal presentations. This was not, hey, mom and dad, can you throw a little cash our way? And we had lots of other friends from business school who invested. Ultimately, it took us, from the time we started to now, was about 14 months, and we hadn't paid ourselves a smidge, and we were still a long way from actually getting off the ground. So here's where I'd like to take a break and give you a few of the learnings from this phase. First question is, do you want to partner it, or do you want to go it alone? Very personal question. Here's some data. It turns out that people who start a business with at least one or more people have a higher success rate. Having said that, going it alone, lots of people do it. What you should know, though, is that the number one reason why businesses that start with 2 people fail is the partnership. So I encourage you, if you are thinking about starting a business with a partner, whether they're equal or unequal or some other combination, I do encourage you to spend time to understand that person, the values, their preferences, their weaknesses, their strengths, their risk profile. If you're already in business and you have a partner, what I'd like to ask you is, how's it going? If you say good, I say great. Invest in it just like you do your marriage. It is an evolving relationship. It takes time and nurturance. Just a tip, Kathy and I would take, every 6 months, we would take time away from the business, talk nothing about the business, talk about how could we support each other better, what is it that was getting us down, how are our roles evolving, what did we need to do next. I found it to be an incredibly valuable way to keep our partnership alive, and we'd always come back renewed and re-energized. If you do have a partnership, and your answer to the question is not so good, I would say address it. Here's what I can tell you. If you don't, the chances that your business are going to be successful are significantly hindered, and more importantly, the chance that you're going to be happy at the end of it all is way lower. So don't let it fester. Okay, point 2. I believe that if you're starting a business, or if you're in the midst of a business, intentionally architect your culture. One thing is for sure, a company's culture will grow like a culture in a petri dish, and it's your job to figure out whether that's a virus or penicillin. Our value statement set the groundwork for the culture of our business. We spent all the time in the world thinking about how we were going to bake it in to the experience of every employee, whether it was the hiring process, the onboarding process, the recruiting process, the customer orientation process, employee recognition. To give you just one example of how we made this true. In 10 years, we hired over 4,000 people. Kathy or I, did every single orientation around culture in the company. No matter when it was their first day, that was the first thing they heard about. And I honestly believe that our culture was what got us through the highs and the lows of running a business. Next point if you are not thinking about starting and you don't have a business idea, please don't be daunted. Commit to starting a company and then commit to creating a process that helps you figure out what business you'd love to be in. And when I tell you this, I also just want to say, here's where it takes the opportunity to be intentional. Decide if you want to have a $1 million, $5 million, $20 million, $50 million, $100 million company. Don't leave that to chance. And pick a business that fits that aspiration. Some people come into this and have a passion for something, and I applaud you. My necklace is made by a beautiful woman, Ashley, who has a passion for pearls, and this is my gift. And she got into business because she loves pearls, but some of us don't have that. We are not driven by a specific thing, so don't be daunted. Here's a point that I don't have time to talk about. I'm just going to say it once. Please hear it. Just know, I didn't start knowing this. I know this now. Some businesses are easier than others. Some businesses are more scalable than others. Google prints money. Not to say that we're all going to go start Google, but just have it in your mind. If you don't have an idea, you can pick one that's easier than others. It can be helpful. Okay, next point, taking money from friends and family. It's uniquely, some people can do this, some people can't. Here's 2 rules of thumb. If you're going to take money from friends and family, please make sure that A, your relationships with those people are very functional, and 2, that those people can afford to lose their money really. Thanksgiving will be very painful if those things are not true. When you are an entrepreneur and you have your life and your work round up to each other, the last thing you want to do is prove to Uncle George why this business is going to be successful every Thanksgiving. It's hard. So just be clear. And I'd also just like to say, for those of you who are starting businesses, and some people's get off the ground and their businesses take off right away. If that's not your experience, please know that for the vast majority of entrepreneurs, people go 18 months without paying themselves a living wage, and sometimes longer. For us, we didn't actually pay ourselves market rate for 3 years. We were conscious about that. We had the ability to do that, but we totally lived a different lifestyle because of it, because we wanted to invest every single dollar that we had extra in other people, because our goal was for it to be successful and us to have the outcome at the end. So it's just one of those things. If it's happening to you, stay with it. Okay, so we have friends and family money. We're off to the races. We're going to go build a website. We're going to go bring customers on. We're going to go build a database of service providers. Our business plan was sound. We knew it. And here's what happened. People were flocking to the internet, but the internet was slow. Remember dial-up? People had no idea that you would come to a website and actually use it for something. So the data showed they were coming in hordes, but they weren't using it. So very quickly, we added a phone number to our service, and the phone began to ring. But then quickly we realized, boy, oh boy, it's really expensive to service by phone. The internet in our business model was like free. So we had all this new information about how our business plan, which we'd carefully thought about painstakingly for a year, was wrong. And so we said to ourselves, okay, what do we do with this information? We decided to look for another way to get this service to market. We still believed in the value of providing a time-saving service to professional women, but as we expanded our definition, it became professional men too. And we identified the fact that companies had a vested interest in providing for the work-life balance of men and women in their companies, women and men. So we quickly changed everything about what we'd done for the last several months. We retooled our website, we retooled our business model, we retooled our pricing, and we went out and we started selling to companies. And lo and behold, they bought it. Arthur Andersen, Mercer Management Consulting, Lotus, the dogs were eating the dog food. So very quickly, and it was like that. We were like, in 2 weeks, we've sold 3 companies. And this is where we made the decision very quickly to surround ourselves with other people who could make our vision a reality. We didn't hesitate. We jumped in. We hired a business school friend of ours, colleague of ours, who had experience with phone servicing, because it was neither Kathy's nor I's experience nor our proclivity or interest to build a phone servicing center. We loved the people part of it, but I don't know anything about operations. We paid her market rate. We brought on an advisor named Phyllis Swirsky, who was the president of Work Family Directions that did child care and elder care servicing in precisely the same model that we were trying to do concierge services. She helped us with our pricing. She helped us get our first six-digit contract. We paid her market rates. We brought on Hal Shear, a gentleman who had a track record of helping early stage entrepreneurs identify more financing because we knew we were going to need to finance this more. He was incredible. He helped us amazingly. We paid him market rates. It took us a year to raise an additional $1.1 million. I want you to repeat that, a year and 80% of my time to continue to fund this business that was now beginning to grow very quickly. So the quick lessons I want you to take away here is we did great planning. There is a point to stop planning and get going because our plan was awesome and wrong. Then the next piece of advice is to listen carefully, face the brutal truth, and be open to changing everything. What was happening for us was happening for a lot of .coms, and we just decided to listen harder. We were hearing silence, right? When nobody's coming to the website after some amount of time, yeah, you could say pour more money into marketing, whatever, but it was just silence, and it's hard to hear silence. So while many entrepreneurs in that period stayed the course, and gosh darn it, it's hard to know when to stay the course and when to change. It's probably the hardest thing about being an entrepreneur. We listened, decided to stay the course on our vision, but bag our approach. It's really crucial to have a mantra inside yourself that says, know what is core to this. And for us, core was the service value proposition, not the methodology and the values, and be willing to change everything else. I also say, surround yourself with good people as early as you can make the case for. Again, paradox. As entrepreneurs, we're taught to be resourceful, creative, don't spend a lot of money, keep the overhead low. I agree with that, except for when you gotta scale. So you gotta make that trade-off and know when it is that it's worthwhile. We made the decision to always pay other people so that we could surround ourselves so that it could free us up to do other things. It's the definition at Harvard Business School that entrepreneurship is the relentless pursuit of opportunity without regard for resources controlled. You have to be creative to figure out how to get people on your team feeling completely invested in the outcome. We gave away a lot of equity in those early years to those same 3 players and others because we wanted people to feel like this was theirs. Okay, so we identified the corporate market, we had some angel funding, now we have to go raise money from VCs because this business is going to start to really go. In the meantime, we had a lucky break. We'd made some inroads into another market segment called customer loyalty. We'd gotten a small contract from a very small company called American Express, and the potential for that to grow was huge. It was about a $50,000 contract in the beginning with the potential to be $5 million in the first year and $15 million in the second year. We were sure, Stanford pedigreed, $15 million on the, in the horizon. We could walk into any venture capitalist and we were certain that we were going to raise a lot of money or raise money quickly. Here's the funny thing that happened. Even though we were facing the brutal truth about .coms, they were not. So we'd been a B2C company, all .com. We changed to B2B2C with a phone servicing element. Suddenly, we were out of favor. We had to hire people to make our service work, and these .coms were fabulously scalable and wonderful, which turned out to be true 10 years later, but not what I'm talking about. So in spite of all the traction that we had, we'd come into these firms with what I would call sort of lukewarm introductions, meaning we'd gotten the opening, but it wasn't like somebody who'd brought us in was championing us, made us rethink and regroup again. It was not enough for us to show up at a top-rate VC with our little pedigrees and some traction. We had to find the VCs who loved what we were doing, which was business services, and find people who could make warm or hot introductions for us. We did that ultimately. Again, it took me 80% of my time and a year to identify 3 VCs who ultimately invested with warm introductions, TL Ventures, Trident Capital, and GE Capital. And it's funny, I mean, I share this information with you because it's learning. We had a great valuation in normal markets. We had a really bad valuation in that market. So we raised $15 million on a valuation of $40 million. And it wasn't that we were sad about that, it's just that, Webvan was getting $100 million on a valuation of $1 billion in those days. So it was interesting. The market context is very powerful. So with $15 million in investment, we again began investing heavily in growth and infrastructure. And in less than a year, and what was happening was that our business was growing. We were on track to do $15 million, but we were going to need to raise an additional round of financing because this was going quickly. And what happened was, unbelievably, the .com bubble burst. Money that had been cheap and easy was now hard and very expensive. And we weren't lacking customers. We had a business model. But no one was doing rounds. Everybody was licking their wounds, protecting their businesses that were failing. And so again, I spent another year. I just tell you this because if you're thinking about raising money, you should know it takes a lot of time, 80% of another year, to find a lead who invested in our company at a down round. So our next round we did at $10 million at a $25 million valuation. And we have almost $15 million in revenue at this time. So the points here, fundraising takes a lot of time, things you can do to improve your odds. Start networking long before you need to go raise money. Never go into someone cold. Find people in the venture world that can become your partners in thinking. Find entrepreneurs who have been invested in by the VCs that you want to go to. Get them to be your champions. Also, target VCs who love the kind of business you're doing. And thirdly, if you're going to do this, figure out a way to staff your team so that you can be out on the road selling your company. And lastly, remember that the market context plays an incredible role in this process for you, regardless of what you do. So a lot of what happened to us was outside of our control. Oh, and also never raise money in August. Never raise money in August. Okay, I'm going to get to the years 2001 to 2007. The theme that connected every year from 2001 to 2007 is true, was growth. We grew from less than 10 customers to over 75, from 200 people to 800 people, from 15 million in revenue to 55, from 1 site to 3 sites. And during that 6-year period, we went through every single high and low that you can possibly imagine, from the incredible low of 9/11 when our business almost completely went off the rails, not to mention the overwhelming distress of everybody in the country and trying to ask yourself, does what I do even matter? To, on the other end, a low where we had 100% turnover in our call center because the volumes were so high that people couldn't take it, which is a function of fast growth. To the highs of winning Massachusetts Small Business of the Year Award and getting the highest customer recognition from one of our best clients. So many things I could tell you about, but I don't have the time, so I'm going to tell you my 3 top learnings from the go-go, grow years. First of all, you have to learn a totally different style of leadership if you're going to be in a company that's going to grow like that. And you have to decide for yourself as an entrepreneur if that's what you really want to do. Long gone were the days when Kathy and I could sit in every product development meeting, meet every customer, spend all the time on the operations. We had to go to a different level. We hired an outside firm to help us grow into the leaders that we needed to be, which really meant stepping back and letting our leadership team grow into the role of leading our dream for themselves. And it included us doing a strategic planning process that actually started with a 10-year vision, if you can imagine, a 3-year strategic plan and a 1-year operational plan, where we were not the founders with the ideas. We were participants in a process that someone else facilitated so that our management team felt that they owned that strategic plan and could do it with us. And then our jobs become point number 2. All about how do you hire, coach, motivate, and develop your people. Again, this is a topic that so many people can talk about, but I can tell you that that operating plan and the learning of how to grow people were the keys to our success from 2001 to 2007. And here's one thing I want to share with you. What's really hard when you learn that that's what your job is that if you're growing a company that fast, it's very likely that you're going to have to let people go on your management team who you love, adore, respect, have done awesome work for you. Because at the stages of growth, what you need are different. And so my advice is to think about leadership and people's development as their career development, regardless of whether they work for you. Because the inspiration and the loyalty that they will get by knowing that you're committed to their success, regardless of whether they're on your team or not, is remarkable. And when it is, if it is their time to leave, they know what they're supposed to do because they know what they're good at. And that is an incredible shift in thinking, I think, about leadership development. And lastly, your job becomes culture cheerleader. If you designed a culture, now you're growing, we were growing at 100, 150 people a year, you gotta be the cheerleader of culture because it's gonna make things on the high that much higher, and when you are having 100% turnover in your call center, people will be with you through it because they know that the culture and the vision is there. All right, last chapter. So I go off to have twins in December of 2006. I come back in April of 2007. Put yourself back before the financial meltdown. These were frothy times. We'd been gunning outside calls from private equity firms if we were willing to sell. Our board decided that it wasn't worth our having one conversation after another. If we were going to think about selling, we should orchestrate a process. And so, looking at the market context, which hadn't been our friend in the past, we said, we love our baby, but we think it's probably the right time to begin to think about selling. So we developed a plan. We created a list of 75 companies who we thought might be interesting to buy our company. We sent out the short plan. About 40 people said they'd be interested. Ultimately, 12 people indicated numbers that they'd be interested in buying the company for. Went down to 6, 4, 2, 1. And ultimately, Sodexo bought our company in 2007, an $8 billion French multinational company. Short story is they are an incredibly strategic fit, cultural fit, and it was a very good financial outcome. But people always ask me, how do you know when it's the right time to sell your company? So one of the things that you got to know, if you're going to take outside money, you are going to have to exit your company. So you should get comfortable with that feeling long before, because when the time comes, if you've mentally prepared for it, it doesn't feel as jarring. And yet, although you should think about whether or not you'd want to exit your company by selling it to someone, or if you're on the track for IPO, which is your preference, you should build your company regardless of who the buyer might be. IPO, specific kind of company. Good to know that there might be a lot of buyers, but not very good to try to sell for one company. And so the thing is that you really want to have thought about when the right time would be to sell your company. Don't sell your company too late. You want to sell your company when your revenues are good and you can tell they're about to get better. Profit is good and you can tell they're about to get better. Your leadership team below you is in place, and ideally a succession plan for yourself is in place. Doesn't have to be all, most of your customers are happy and referenceable, and also that you have your back office in line. You know all of your warts, every single one of the things that makes your company bad. You are going to tell that buyer in the courting stage what stinks about your business, not 4 days before the wedding. Because in that courting stage, they're like, oh yeah, we all have warts, that's fine. If you tell them right before the wedding, they're like, ooh, that is a very big wart. So make sure you know where everything bad is. And then go as fast as you can. Go as fast as you can. Most deals that get started do not get closed. And that's because things change. And the number one thing that changes is somebody's numbers go south, yours or theirs. Also, those warts come out and people haven't heard them early enough. So go. Do not stall. Be ready and go. And then, again, I said it, but pay attention to that market context. If you have any choice in this matter, try to think about it, pay attention to the fact that the market is better, not worse. I think if we'd waited another 3 months, our story would not have ended the same way. I don't think I'd be at Harvard Business School. I think I'd be running circles, which would be great because I love my company. But the market would have taken it all in a different direction. Okay, so I know I've given you a lot to think about. I have all those takeaways that Womenetics would be happy to share with you afterwards by email if you'd like them. I just wanted to tell you that, as a prologue, I did go and start another company the next day. I definitely had baby brain. I was somehow high on the notion that that was a good idea. But I did it anyway, and it was a very nice success as well. I could tell a whole other story on juggling twins and a new startup, which I didn't choose to share today, but it's definitely harder with kids. So I do believe that for the role reversal, I'd birthed the baby first and then I had the kids. The business was a roller coaster. Kids feel like a merry-go-round in a relative sense, although yesterday was bumper cars because as I was coming here, my child fell out of bed, split open her chin, and I was on the phone with the doctors going, yeah, 6 stitches, okay. But I really hope that these specific things that I've shared with you for whatever phase in your business that you're in are helpful. Please believe that whatever you want to set your mind to and intentionalize can be what you accomplish. Dare to set your sights big is what I offer. And with that, I'll bring my remarks to a close and allow you to ask questions if you have any. That's a very interesting question. We didn't have a friends background, right? We met at business school. So I would say that we became friends, but we started as professional acquaintances at that same moment. So our whole development as a friendship and a partnership was simultaneous. So we didn't come to the party with, you know, expectations about past friendship. The question was, how did Kathy and I establish our roles? Right? We came in as equal partners. So at first, we actually wanted to be and decided we would be co-CEOs. And then, you know, as we went out with a business that was about concierge, which in and of itself sounds nice and niche-y and kind of cottagey, and we're 28-ish with no track record, we got the feeling that people weren't taking us seriously. And actually then we got some really good advice that said, you know, when you decide that you're going to take different titles, it actually helps the company to understand what it is one person does versus the other. So for the outside reasons and the real reasons, we decided I would be the CEO and she would be the president. And we got to that answer actually much less difficultly when we got into it than we thought. And it was because in a relative sense, we asked each other, what were our preferences? And my preference in the world is when in doubt, call out. I am a networker by nature, I am a seller by nature, I am a fundraiser by nature, and her approach is when in doubt, build a spreadsheet. And, you know, build a team and build a process and, you know, think about what you would actually do to make it happen. And when we got clear, even though we shared so much about vision and values, our actual preferences were different. I could trust her any day of the week to be the CEO because she could do it, but she'd put it number 4 or 5 or 6 on her list. Raising money, calling out, selling. And I would put building a spreadsheet or making a process, I'd probably put them like number 30. But I could do it. You know, we're all trained that way. So that's how we got there. Really clarifying what the role meant and why it was important. Yes?
Thank you for sharing your story. What is it about August and raising money that you experienced?
Yeah, so venture capitalists, angels, people who are sort of in the investment community, they just take August off. They just shut off their brains. I mean, it sounds antiquated, it sounds like something out of the past, but I just had 3 companies that I'm advising in full swing investment, and July 30th, it came to a grinding halt, and now, just now, right after Labor Day, are they getting the traction back again?
What is your advice to an entrepreneur, and I'm a food manufacturer, in raising capital right now that we're out of August and trying to build a story when your numbers are not looking as good as they did 3 years ago? Yeah,
it's really hard. So, what I'd actually say is right now is definitely better. It's always better on the way back up than the way down. So specifically, you know, now is a little bit better. People are feeling some wind. I think what you have to do about your numbers is you just have to not be defensive. This is everybody's reality. We are on the way up. It doesn't matter what was. We all know we went through a meltdown. Just own it, you know, and not feel bad about it. And then I think also, it's just true, the market context could make the investment terms less than you'd want, but you have to ask yourself, it's reality, what's the trade-off? You know, and not, I mean, just to repeat, we took $10 million on a $25 million valuation when we had $15 million in revenue, but don't be defensive. You're in the same place as everyone, and that's the businesses that they're investing in today.
Can you talk about the greatest moment of fear or a day where you thought, okay, this is so hard,
Yep.
Is it worth it? And
Yep.
how you push through that, because I think many people, that's the greatest thing is the what if, and
Yeah.
how am I going to push through?
So I had just gone on vacation in August to the Cape when I got a call from my business partner that Amex had called us in for a very serious meeting. They were thinking of canceling the contract, which was, I mean, it was our flagship contract. It was an enormous part of our value proposition. That was aligned with when the call center volumes were so high. We were missing every service level requirement that they had for us. Customer satisfaction, time to pick up the phone, you know. And I was beyond devastated at the phone call, at the prospect of going down there. And what Kathy and I did, first of all, we shared this with a lot of people in the company, more than you think you might. because the way in which people rallied around this information, as opposed to being like, oh my God, I'm losing my job. It was like, okay, what do we have to do to fix this? I mean, I was a basket case. I was a total basket case. Kathy is, call Kathy the sperm whale. She can go underwater and survive for an incredibly long time. And I am like much more up and down. So even though I, look strong at this moment, I can also be like, and the way that people rallied to get us out of this, and the letters that they wrote to Amex about how we were going to solve this problem together, and then giving us the power to go down there with sort of all these testimonials for employees that could handle it. It was, I still have goosebumps. It was overwhelming. And again, that's where I think the culture comes into play, because people knew that we had, they wanted this to work.
Your story about how you and your partner got together and the time that you invested in that sound fabulous. I expect you didn't do that with every other employee. So what are your best tricks of the trade to hiring great?
Yeah. No, you're right. We didn't spend that much time, but I will say that we do spend a lot of time, and find that hiring to be, this is a very crass way of saying it, but hire slow, fire fast. Take the time. So the answer to your question also depends on what level of person we're hiring. But almost always, if it was a person above manager level, we'd actually have them, well, as I talked about, as part of the hiring process, we would talk about values. So we would give people in advance our value statement and our cultural statement and ask them how it resonated for them, and did it work for them, and just let them talk about that, so that gets at your cultural fit. We would also ask people to do projects in preparation for the interview, around what the job would entail. Not something that would take them a week to do, but something that would take them 3-4 hours to do, so that we could get a sense of their commitment and their capacity. So we probably did spend more time hiring people than most people. In terms of our service professionals, we would actually have the people who are actually talking to the customer on the phone, we would have them do, without any preparation, a live phone call. Not with the client, but with a trainer, that we would tape, and then we would ask them to reflect on how they thought that went. And one of the things we would look for was whether or not they were self-aware. So it wasn't as much a question of whether or not they did a great job in that phone call. It was whether or not they had a customer service mentality that said to them, oh my God, that stunk, would you train me? As opposed to, I think that was pretty good, and you'd go, ooh, I don't know. So we spent, right? So we'd architect the hiring process for the role and spend more time.
Janet, could you speak to bootstrapping versus venture capital?
Sure.
You mentioned marriage. Certainly that's very important when it comes to raising VC money. But the times that we live in, the global economy, that's not necessarily always an option. What are your thoughts on bootstrapping in today's?
I advise a lot. Again, it's always helpful for me to have the context of the specific business, because certain businesses are easier to bootstrap than others. But my gosh, if you can bootstrap it, I say go for it. I mean, really, we as I described, we got to, we bootstrapped the planning process, but we started raising money from the beginning. I think any way that you can get your customer to fund your financing, I am totally in support of that. And again, I think it's about thinking about your customer not just as a customer, but a partner in your success. And I think about businesses as being oxygen, aspirin, or jewelry. So oxygen businesses are businesses that propel the life of other businesses through revenue. Aspirin businesses are businesses that solve a pain, and it's way better to have your aspirin business be more like morphine if you can. And then in the jewelry segment, right, that's about happiness and entertainment, and I apologize too because I'm a woman to say this, but the more addictive you can have your jewelry be, the better. So back to the bootstrapping, to get the customer to understand that whichever business you're in, that they really need you, and that they can be a partner in your success in getting them, or a consortium of them, which is always a great way to go too. If you can get like three or four or five, depending on your needs, to sort of sign up for advanced sales. Our first 6-digit contract, when they asked us what the payment terms were, we told them that it was half in advance. And they said, really? Why is that? I said, oh, it's industry standard. We were the industry. So think about all the ways that you can get your customers. I think some of the best success stories out there are ones that have been bootstrapped from the beginning.
Hi, can you talk a little bit, clearly your business model depended on strategic alliances and partnerships with execution partners. Can you talk a little bit about selecting partners and the ongoing management of the quality of your partnerships?
So when you're talking about partners as opposed to customers?
Well, if I'm a customer, didn't I go through you to get concierge services delivered?
We definitely were extraordinarily clear about what we didn't have a lot of partners, but our customers, who are the people who bought our services, and we delivered concierge to their customers. Every single year, we would put on a board who were the 5, 15, and 40 customers we wanted to go after specifically, and then go down into why they would make a good customer. And we were also really not shy about firing our customers if they were bad. Meaning they just didn't, how do I explain this? That the value proposition that we were offering was not meeting what they were trying to do, because you can spend a lot of time on a customer that isn't working. So we were very intentional about which customers we were going after and where we believed the fit would work the best. And then when we did all that work up front, when we would go into that customer, it was like they couldn't believe that we knew so much about their business and why we thought it would work for them. So be very intentional, I think, is what you're saying, and we certainly were. So thank you. This conference is going to be great, and look forward to talking to you.